Hari Om. Verse 47. कर्मण्येवाधिकारस्ते मा फलेषु कदाचन मा कर्म फल हेतुर्भूर् मा ते संगोस्त्व कर्मणि. Karmane in work, eva only, adhikara right, te ma not, phaleshu in the fruits, kadachana at any time, ma not, karma phala hetur who, let not the fruits of action be thy motive, ma not, te thy, sangaha attachment, astu let there be, akarmani in inaction. Thy right is to work only, but never to its fruits. Let not the fruit of action be the motive, nor let thy attachment be to inaction. In the last two stanzas, Bhagavan showed his friend the goal that is to be reached, which lies beyond the arena of the Vedas. In and through karma, intelligently pursued, a man is to grow and fulfill his evolution and identify himself with his own real nature, the self. But the charioteer of Arjuna knew him very well, and therefore the Lord now explains the path by which the supreme goal can be reached by the Pandavas. The traditional belief of Hinduism, the theory that single pointed karma without desire for the fruits shall bring about inner purification, which is a necessary condition precedent to the spiritual awakening, has not yet been shaken at all by the Gita. The Gita only expands this idea to incorporate in it all activities in social and personal life, while in the Vedas, karma meant only the religious and ritualistic activities. Philosophy is not a theme that can be rightly understood by hasty students. The stanza now under review, when not properly understood, would seem to indicate an impossible method. At best, it would look as a religious sanction for the poor to continue to be poor and a sacred permission for the rich to continue tyrannizing over the poor. To do our duties in life without any expectation of results would seem to be almost impossible to the one who is trying to understand the stanza through his imagination. But when the same individual, after his studies, walks out in the open field of his life and there tries to practice them, he shall discover that this is the very secret of real achievement. Earlier, we had indicated how Krishna, through his karma yoga, was showing the art of living and acting in an ordered spirit of divine inspiration. Here also we shall find, as we tussle with this idea in our attempt to digest this, that Krishna is advising Arjuna upon the secret art of living an inspired life. Wrong imagination is the bane of life, and all failures in life can be directly traced to have risen from an impoverished mental equanimity, generally created by the unintelligent entertainment of expected fears for the possible failures. Almost all of us refuse to undertake great activities, fearing failures that might happen. And even those who dare to undertake noble endeavors invariably become nervous ere they finish it. Again, due to their inward dissipation. Avoid such wasteful expenditure of mental energy. Work with the best that is in us, all dedicated to the noble cause of the work undertaken is the secret prescription for work in high inspiration. And such work must always end in brilliant success. That is the eternal law of activity in the world. The future is carved out in the present moment. Tomorrow's harvest depends upon today's plowing and sowing. But in the fear of possible dangers to the crop, if a farmer wastes his present chances of plowing sufficiently and sowing at the right time, it is guaranteed that he shall not have any harvest at all to gather in the end. The present moments are to be invested intelligently and well so that we may reap better times in the future. The past is dead. The future is not yet born. If one becomes unhealthy and inefficient in the present, certainly he has no reason to hope for a greater future. This fundamental truth, very well known and easily comprehended by all, is applied here and in the language of the Gita. If success you seek, then never strive with a mind dissipated with anxieties and fears for the fruits. In this connection, it is very interesting to dissect carefully and discover exactly what the Shastra means when it says fruits of action. In fact, the reward of an action, when understood it properly, is not anything different from the action itself. An action of the present, when conditioned by a future time, appears itself as the fruit of the action. In fact, the action ends or fulfills itself only in its reaction. And the reaction is not anything different from the action. The action of the present, defined in terms of the future moment, is its reaction. Therefore, to worry over and get ourselves preoccupied with the anxieties for the rewards of actions is to escape ourselves from the present and to live in the future that is not yet born. We have already found that achievements are carved out in the present. To get ourselves, therefore, agitated over the fruits of action is to escape the present and to live ourselves in the dreamland of the future, which is yet born. In short, the Lord's advice here is to call to man not to waste his present moments in fruitless dreams and fears, but to bring his best, all the best in him, to present and live vitally every moment. And the promise is that the future shall take care of itself and provide the karma yogi with the achievement divine and accomplishment supreme. When this scientific truth is put in the language of the Gita, we have the verse now we are trying to explain. Arjuna is advised that all that is given to you is to act, and having known the cause of action to be noble intention, bring into the activity all that is best in you and forget yourself in the activity. Such inspired action is sure to bear fruit, and immediately it is its own reward. The stanza gives the four injunctions guiding us to a true worker. A real karma yogi is one who understands A, that his concern is with the action alone. B, that he has no concern with the results. C, that he should not entertain the motive of gaining a fixed fruit for a given action. And D, that the above said ideas do not mean that he should sit back courting inaction. In short, the advice is to make the worker release himself from all his mental preoccupations and through work make him live in the joy and ecstasy of a divine self forgetfulness. The work itself is his reward. He gets himself drunk with the joy and satisfaction of noble work done. By acting thus readily to all external challenges, one can find peace easily, and a bosom thus purged of its existing vasana bondages is to that extent considered better purified for the purpose of meditation and the final Vedantic realization of the infinite glory of the self. Next stanza. If a man should not perform work urged by desires for their result, how then is to be performed? The reply as follows. Yogastha kuru karmani sangam tyaktva dhananjaya siddhya siddhyo samo bhutva samatvam yoga uchyate. Yogastha, steadfast in yoga. Kuru, perform. Karmani, action. Sangha, attachment. Tyaktva, having abandoned. O Dhananjaya. Siddhya siddhyo, in success and failure. Sama, the same. Bhutva, having become. Samatvam, evenness of mind. Yoga is called, Uchyate is called. Perform action, O Dhananjaya. Being steadfast in yoga, abandoning attachment, and balanced in success and failure. Evenness of mind is called yoga. From this stanza onwards, we shall have an exhaustive discussion of the technique of karma yoga as conceived by Krishna in his doctrine of action and expounded by Vyasa's Gita. A complete technique of how one can live the life of a true inspired worker is explained here, and to any careful student who understands all the implications of the terms, it must be clear that a complete effacement of individuality and its vanities is to be achieved in this path for success. This is gained also by practicing the equipoise mentioned in the previous stanzas. In this stanza, for the first time, the term yoga has been used in the context of the evenness of mind through work. And in the very same stanza, before it concludes, we get an exhaustive definition too of the term yoga as used here. Evenness of mind, tranquility, or mental composure in all pairs of opposites, as indicated in verse 39, is defined here as yoga. Defined thus, the term yoga, as used here, indicates a special condition of the mind in which it comes to a new neutral equilibrium in all the ebb and flow of life's tides. The instructions in the stanza advise us that desireless action can be performed only when one gets completely established in yoga, where the term means precisely what Vyasa defines it to mean here. Not only is it sufficient that true workers should act in the world established in equipoise and equanimity, but he should also reinforce his poise amidst the changes of the world through a renunciation of his attachment, asanga. Innumerable commentators hastily enter the stanza and leave this portion almost unexplained. They leave the idea raw to the reader, and their commentary on this non attachment remains ever incomplete for a seeker. We shall try to inquire into the attachment mentioned here, which a seeker should renounce so that he may become more efficient in performing inspired activities. To all sincere students who have so far followed the Lord's words, it should be clear that the non attachment advised here is exactly the same as that against which Krishna had already warned in the earlier stanzas and insisted that we must renounce them. Wrong imaginations, false expectations, daydreams about the fruits of actions, anxiety for results, and fears for the future calamities that have not yet appeared to threaten our life. When it is put thus as a list of mistakes to be avoided, any true karma yogi striving upon the path of yoga should find it impossible to practice it. But when we analyze this further with our understanding of the Upanishads, we shall easily solve the riddle. All the above nerve wracking mistakes belong to the delusory ego center. When we analyze closely the stuff with which the ego is made, we can easily find that it is a bundle of memories of the past, hopes and expectations for the future. The past are dead moments that are no more to be ours. The future is yet born and does not yet belong to us now. To live in the ego and expects fruits of the future is to live either on the burial ground of the dead moments or in the womb of time where the unborn future today rests. In all these preoccupations, we are losing the immediate moments given to us to act, to strive, to earn, and to achieve. It is this unintelligent squandering of wealth of the present chances through our broodings and imaginations that is hinted at here by the genius of Vyasa when he said, act established in equanimity, abandoning attachment. Thus, incomplete self forgetfulness to get ourselves intoxicated with the activities undertaken in the present is to live the immediate moments vitally, fully, and entirely with all best that is in us. To dissolve ourselves thus, our past, our future, our hopes, our fears into the fiery contents of the present is to work in inspiration. An inspired work ever guarantees the greatest returns. An artist who is at work, forgetting himself in the very joyous ecstasy of his work, is an example of what we have said above. One need not even be a great artist, and an artist working interestedly with all his mind and intellect on a piece of work will not be able to recognize immediately any chance intruder and will not be able to answer even the visitor's inquiries about his personal identity or his beloved belongings in life. It would take time for the artist to come down from the realms of his joyous mood and to the crystallization of an ego in him to recognize the intruder, understand his inquiry, and give him an intelligent answer. In all inspired activity, the worker forgets himself in the work that he is doing. In all such activities, when the worker has gained almost a self forgetfulness, he will not care for the success or failure of his activity, because to worry for the result is to worry for the future moment. And to live in the future is not to live in the present. Inspiration is the joyous content of thrilled ecstasy of each immediate moment. Again, inspiration is the joyous content of thrilled ecstasy of each immediate moment. It is said that the content of a moment in itself is the entire infinite bliss. Established thus in equanimity, renouncing all egocentric attachments, forgetting to worry over the results of success or failure in the activities, act on, says Krishna to Arjuna. And he adds that the great yoga is to work thus with equipoise in all situations. That is the great commentary of the greatest guru ever born, I think. Hari Om.
Hari Om. we had some beautiful commentaries by comments on the commentaries by Gurudeva. Balaji Maharaj read and spoke also with required emphasis, as Ishwarji indicated. And this shloka, if as rightly said, that is the most famous, oft repeated, and almost considered to be the essence of Bhagavad Gita. More so because most of us are in the field of action, karma. So naturally, this shloka happens to be having a close affinity to all of us. For the Jnana Yogi, perhaps this one will make sense in a different way. But for those who are embedded in the work as we are, this shloka has a different appeal. Rightfully, it has been given a place in everybody's mind. Every individual, every Hindu, every person who is reading Gita remembers this as one of the first shloka. The fact here is everyone knows and everyone interprets it also very easily that you do action, karma, that is your adhikara, don't desire for the fruits. And more or less the understanding it ends here. And then the one who is repeating this shloka, he himself gets little deluded in the mind that I have been asked not to desire for the result. Then how is it that, and why should I be working if the results are not there? And if the results come contrary to my expectation, what is the motive left for me to work? They say you cannot live without work. And even if I decide I will stay without work, I cannot in this world. I will have to work. That everyone, out of inevitability, compulsion of life, whatever you name it. But the fact is, we will be working. When I'm working, I'm told that you just work. You don't have anything to do with the results. That is pretty disillusioning. That is pretty disheartening. That is quite disappointing to me, because you invest. No guarantee you will get money. No, my mind thinks in the other way. I'm investing because I'm likely to get money. As we start thinking little deeply into it, we realize that every action we do have our eyes set on a fixed result. It's very easy to say, when we talk to each other, we say, Dekho, it's all in the God's hand, you may get it, you may not, but that's all superficial. Heart of heart, we want our child to top the Harvard University. That's what our intention is. I'm earning money and saving for my child's education so that he can go to US and study in the best possible university and get a job perhaps in Google or Microsoft. Fixed results are in mind. That is prompting our action. Let us admit it. Then what is that this particular shloka is trying to tell me, and how I can implement this shloka in my personal life so that I can become a karma yogi? Right now I am karma phala bhogi. From there to karma yogi, how do I do this journey? The answer to that entire thing involved in life as action has been given in just 2 lines by Bhagavan. The beauty lies in both the divine eloquence by Bhagavan himself, and of course the expression given to the words in the form of Sanskrit. Karma. The word karma itself has more than 16 meanings in Rigveda itself, in Vedas. Karma word has been, in fact, there is a Rucha in Rigveda which says karma has 16 meanings. There is a Rucha by itself. They have divided karma itself into 3 types, action into 3 types. When you obtain a karma, it is called apas. When you do it, it is called karma. And when you take it to the logical end, it is called damsa. So apas, you obtain the karma. Karma, you do the karma. Damsa you take to the logical end. We only think of the middle karma. First of all, why did you got this karma? Why the karma itself came to me? Because you obtained it. Apas. How did you obtain it? I obtained it because of the desire to do a particular type of karma. Why did the desire came? The desire came because of avidya. Avidya, kama, karma. This triad is repeated n number of times by Shankaracharya in all his bhashyas. Brahma Sutra, Upanishad, as well as Upanishada, we will see again and again in the commentary or the bhashyam of Shankaracharya Maharaj, repetition of what is called as Mula Granthi, Avidya Granthi or Avidya Kama Karma, Trivida Granthi. Anyway, that avidya has happened, we are here, it's a fact. We cannot undo the apas. Why the hell I was born? That question has no answer because you have already done enough to get born. How do I get rid of it? Don't get born. How do I do that? That is what Bhagavad Gita is talking about. But first come first. Now that you are already in this illusory world and have been destined and you ought to act, you will be acting, that is differently. You ought to act. You have to. You cannot escape it. Now the question is, because you have been asked to act or ought to act, is it not better to learn how to act? Then comes the question that I have a desire to do something. Right now, I have a desire to understand what Gurudeva has said in this commentary. Is it not a desire? If I don't have to have desire, then I will not be able to read this particular commentary because I have a desire that I should understand what Gurudeva has written in the commentary. And here it is says that no desire should be there. How do I reconcile this? Before that, we need to understand that the very fact that the jiva, every jiva in this world is endowed by God himself, he being the progenitor of all these species, has endowed his gunas to them, and the essential guna, vaibhavam of the Lord, which has come to me also, is jnana shakti, ichha shakti, karma shakti, karya shakti it is called. So jnana, ichha and karya, knowledge, desire and action, these are godly attributes. So having them is not an issue at all. It is using them that is an issue. So ichha is an essential attribute of godliness in us. You have to have desire. I want to meet Krishna. Is it not a desire? Draupadi called for Krishna, come and help me. He will help me. Was it not a desire? Mumukshatvam, is it not a desire? I want to be free. I want to have salvation. Is it not a desire? Then what desire are they talking about? The ichha, jnanam and karya or karma, that triad plays in the field of karma yoga by virtue of God's own design, being a part of the cosmos. I have these three functions to be utilized in the role that is given to me. Am I a tree? Yes, the Lord has made me a tree. So I have a divine desire in me which makes me fructify. And then as a tree, I suck the water and the nutrients from the ground, convert the whole thing into beautiful flora and fauna. The fruits are there, and I have no desire. Those fruits will be eaten by somebody. Under my shade, somebody will sit. Whether my shade has been utilized by a bad man or a good man, whether my fruits are eaten or not, or they are rotten on the branches itself, that is none of my concern. This is how a tree blooms. There being no difference in the constituents of the cosmos, proportionate to the role given and proportionate to the vikasana shilata or the development of the antakarana, the role differs. I have a better developed antakarana than the tree, I am a man. And because I have a refined intellect, I'm able to think more and more so in the terms of present, past, and future compared to a tree. That is the only difference. But what I am destined to as a divine will is certain. So again, I shall also be using Jnana, Ichcha, and Karya Shakti to do the thing that I am placed into a situation called Prapta Paristhiti to do a certain things. I married, sir, so I became a father. So now by Paristhiti, being a father, the Kartavyam, Ichcha and Jnana will remain always same, but the Kartavyam will change. Kartavyam is nothing else but the refined form of Karya Shakti. When done in the proper manner, it becomes Kartavya. It is obligatory duty. While performing the same, because there is an obligation to perform that duty, I shall be working in that direction. So far, so good. The problem then starts that when I do the first act of my life, as a child, I was crawling on the ground and I realized that when I cry, my mother gives me something to eat. Now what happened, when I really was hungry, I cried as a 2-day-old infant. The mother gave me milk right away. As a 2-year-old, I realized that if I cry, even when I'm not hungry, I still get something. Now, for the sake of getting a thing from my mother, I started crying. See the difference between two desires. One is called as priori and one is called posteriori. Priori and posteriori means I want to study Gurudeva's commentary on this shloka so that I can understand. It's a desire. It's a priori desire. Desire for the action. It is also can be termed as a samvadi brahma. It is samvadi brahma meaning it is a desire. Desire per se is bad. But at least this is a desire that is ultimately taking me towards the salvation. So such a desire will prompt my action. The action will be reading the book, reading this commentary given by Gurudeva. Then there is another desire associated with every action, that is posteriori desire, the desire that is, in one reading, I must understand what Gurudeva has said, and thereafter my life has to be going to be in heaven because I have understood Gurudeva, this shloka is understood, Gita is by heart me, I can then, what has happened? All the desires now from this action-oriented desire have gone beyond the action towards chasing the fruit of the action. The resultant effect of the action. And why I don't have a right on the result of the action? Because result is inevitable outcome, essentially born out of effort done in the present or in the past. A lot of study I did, but I failed. So can there be a then logical conclusion that you study hard, you fail? That cannot be the conclusion. Then why did I fail if I have studied so hard? मैंने तो कोई कसर नहीं छोड़ी थी. I left no stone unturned. That's always been the statement on my side. But then why the result came like this? Because phala prapti of any action is dependent on more than 9 factors, which are called as sadharana karana, and there is only one asadharana karana. Sadharana karanam starts with Ishvara, Ishvara Ichcha, Ishvara Prayatna, Drushta Drushta, Purva Karma, Punyam, Papam, Pratibandha bhava, anubandha bhava, these are all called sadharana karan for karma phalam, which are not in our hands. For example, you happen to be a person who was constantly torturing somebody in the past, in your past birth. And now what happened is you go and try to work properly at some place and somebody tortures you. And then you ask a question, look, I did a normal, proper work and still he is torturing me. How can this be the result of my action? Sir, the result of this action is not related to your present action that you perform, but it is also tainted and colored by the past burden of the actions done by you earlier. Now, when all these 9 other factors of what is called as sadharana karana are taken aside, then the 10th action comes. The 10th is the person who performs the action is called asadharana karan, and it is also called as karana. Karana means indriya. So my action, what I do, forms 1/10 of. Now the question is it basically to derogate you as an actor in the whole scene? No. You have been actor all along. The past actions where you were the actor have now turned into this sadharana karan. Right now you are a asadharana karan. That is the first part of it. Second part of it, since you do not know what you have done in the past, since you do not know what is the role of other 9 factors involved into it, then the question is, how can you say by guarantee that, it has to, all you can do is sow the seed in the ground. Generally, you may say, generally, it gives rise to a nice plant. It need not be always, sir. That is because other factors are to be taken into account. That means desire to do the act is endowed, everybody is endowed with that. In fact, that desire to act itself also has some relation with the past. It is nothing else but a painter born with a classical hand in this birth. Are we trying to say that he is a printer born in this particular birth? No, sir. He has brought the skills from the past. A person of the stature of Kumar Gandharva, at the age of 7, gave a public recital in which people even threw their watches and money and whatnot. A 7-year-old boy. He was called Kumar Gandharva. Where did he learn all this, sir? Beethoven. Where did he got all this? Vivekananda has given the example of Beethoven in this respect. The dumb and a deaf child becoming a music prodigy. How do you explain this, sir? This can be explained because the same action has been done earlier, got interrupted for the time being because of loss of body till the time the new body was acquired by the Linga Sharira. If there is so much behind a karma that happens, then how can I then say that, look, I have to have this result? If you say so, the Lord will say, sorry, sir, you are one of the factor. There are so many aspects behind it, all created by you with the help of my Chaitanyam, agreed. But you misutilize the Chaitanyam in the past birth, etc. I have nothing to do with it. What I am is, I am basically an adjudicator here. What all I do is, 2 plus 2 is equal to 4. That is how I put the question. Now you removed the 2, you put 1 into it and try to make 2 plus 1, 4. That is all your creation. You precisely put 2 plus 2, I shall give you 4. That's my rule. To set the rule is my desire. That is my Vishwa Nirmiti. To change the rule is your action. The change in the rule results in what is called as dissipation of energy into negative things, leading to dukkham and sukham. Then instead of finding out what has gone wrong where, you want to only cling upon to the result that only sukham I want to have. So I will be doing an action if it definitely can give me sukham. This is what my precondition is. And Lord's precondition is no. Result is not in your hand. Action I am giving it to you. That is why karmani eva, karmani saptami, in the karma is your adhikar. Ma phaleshu, again saptami, not in the fruit. Ma phaleshu kadachana. Some exception, sir. Once at least have I will have no. Kadachana. That means clear cut. One room is out of your bound. All you can do is walk in this room called action or the karma. So if I do action or the karma, now the problem is when I started doing the action, my past comes to haunt me in the form of smruti. And that past haunts me, and that hounding of past creates anxiety in me about what will happen. How, when. This is how our actions are. I don't know what will happen. A very classical example is happening in front of us. It has nothing to do with our karma also. Or it may be with something to do with karma of all of us in the world. There is one virus that is circulating in the air. It could be our cumulative karma. We don't know. Now the question is, what will happen? When will it go? Will the vaccine come or not? And the best part is, neither I am the scientist who is developing the vaccine, nor I am the person who is trying to rule the country. I am one meager small trifle person sitting inside the home and worrying about the whole thing, what will happen, because Lord has already relinquished his job and has handed it over to me. This is, first of all, not my, at least not my individualistic karma. It could be a cumulative karma, fair enough. And I'm worried about the result of that. Why? Because I'm habituated to doing the karma like that. So my every karma, and when did the habit start, sir? It started, Maharaj, long back. I have been doing karmas like this. So now I am habituated to it. Before I even undertake a karma, I immediately ask, what is in it for me? There are no free lunches. Where are you going to the office? No, I'm going to the office. Why? You know what, this I have to do, because if I do that, then that will happen. If that happens, then that will happen. And if that happens, then you see what I will do. What is happening? A complete dissipation of energy, as Swamiji said, past and future both burden our present, burden to the extent that present is obliterated by past and future. That being the result, ma karma phala hetu word has been used. Hetu means causative factor. Hetu means purpose. That is what we have normally in mind because of the language. Mind well, Sanskrit has a different meaning for hetu. In fact, in Nyaya Shastra, hetu is, I think, numbers of pages have been devoted to this word hetu. Hetvabhas. There is something called hetvabhas, fallacy of apprehension, a speciality of Nyayic Tattvajnana. Hetu means hetuhu yah karayati sa hetuhu. That means yah karayati sa hetuhu, causative action. Now, ma karma phala hetuhu. That means don't consider yourself as the progenitor of action, cause of action. I am acting. That is the problem. Me as an actor, me as the person who is doing the karma is the basic problem. That is the reason why the future anxiety is coming. Suppose if I am not in the action, in the sense of me getting as I, ahankara, ego center, if it is not there into that question, in that particular action, where is the question of phalam? So we have two options. One is I as an ego center involved into the action, or the phalam that is coming, that being denounced. So either you denounce the fruits of the action or you denounce the actorhood itself. That has come in the beginning of the second adhyaya, where Bhagavan himself said that the first one is very difficult. Kartrutva shunyata is very difficult. You should try bhoktrutva shunyata. Bhoktrutva shunyata would mean not a desiring any result. जो दे उसका भी भला, जो न दे उसका भी भला, आखिर दरवेश की सदा क्या है? And that is why Gurudeva has given one after other what can be termed as sparkling arrows of intelligence, which could be guiding lights forever in life. First of all, he calls this shloka as secret art of living an inspired life. It's a secret art. Secret means you need to master it. It's not so easy. Why not so easy? Because when it says sango asangatva, asangatva, if it is insisted, that asangatva is not an action, it is an attitude. Karma is an action. Asangatva is an attitude. So asangatva is in spirit. Renunciation is in spirit, not action. Madhusudan Saraswati has commented on this shloka like this, that vairagyam or asangatvam in an action is a mental attitude. Now, how can you be neutral about what you are doing, yet passionately involved in the action? It appears contradictory to us. This shloka is not as it sounds. It requires enormous amount of mananam. How is it that you are involved in the action, but at the same time you are not involved into it as Sangha? And that is when the example given by Balaji Maharaj could be a very good example. The painter there was involved in the action with a complete passion so that he was in the action itself. And then when was the renunciation of the action, that I am doing the act? In fact, the very fact that you get involved in the action, to the extent you are involved in the action, the ego comes down. And a complete zero ego is complete involvement in the action. Most of the accountants are very well versed, not in the modern days, of course, the computers are used, but the older days when the accounts were done, the trial balance balancing was a big act always done in the end of the March, the financial year end in India. Nights after nights, they will work, the accountants, because now the books have to be submitted to the income tax. And then what happens, there was manual ledgers. And there, those balances were debit, credit, JVs, everything they used to check and they used to find, see, here I had written 1 instead of 1 2. And he got the mistake. And it is to give him pleasure. Sir, why a mistake in 2 figures should be giving you pleasure? In mathematics, when you solve a question, you remember all our childhood days of 9, 10 standard trigonometry, calculus, whatever limits, etc. When we are solving a question, moment you get the question right, I got it. Why you are happy, sir? It's an inanimate thing. Why you are becoming happy? The happiness came because right at the moment when I was involved in the equation, I was 100% into the equation, 0% in me. That time I did not have a sense that I am solving the equation. This is called renunciation in the form of ownerhood. So ego center is getting slowly dissolved and involvement into the act is more. The question is, longer you stay in such action, not only that you become happy, you make the surroundings happy. Swami Vivekananda, when he used to sing, Ramakrishna Paramahamsa used to go in samadhi. A singing of his was so passionate, he used to sing from the soul, as Ramakrishna Paramahamsa used to call it. That singing itself was a complete dissolution of ego. So wherever any action, singing, acting, dancing, doing mundane work, cleaning this, there was even a talk about many people watching Mahatma Gandhi taking bath with curiosity because they felt so good to see him taking baths. What is there in taking baths, sir? The fact was, he was so involved that one other person even commented that it felt like as if he was born for taking the last and the only bath. That is called involvement in the work. And what is our situation? We are never into the present. That is the reason why, right? Just think about it. When we are washing our hands, we are never in the washing of the hands because the mind is somewhere before and after. When you take bath, you are thinking of breakfast. When you take breakfast, you are thinking of office. When you are office, you are thinking of home. When you're home, you're thinking of office. We are never in the present. Let me give you a very good example of being in present. If at all somebody has gone through this so-called infatuation in the younger age about opposite sex, the boyfriend or the girlfriend, that time when they decide to meet each other, they are so much into the present that he goes out of way. While going, he doesn't look at the door, the shops, the crowd, the this and this. He's, because only thing is, I must go in because we have decided to meet at 4 o'clock in the garden. And you go in the garden and then you talk to each other, and then we keep wondering, for last 3 hours they are talking to each other. What are they talking? It is because he and she both have decided to leave their ego to a great extent and get into something else. This dissolving your ego is the most critical part of the thing, and that is why Gurudeva has actually given a very good, forget himself in the activity is the word given by the Gurudeva. So while talking about this, Gurudeva says that dissolving your ego can be done in many ways. A karma yogi dissolves his ego by getting involved into the action. More involved you are into action, less you will think about not only past and future results, but you will be completely embedded, immersed into the present. That is why when we do Bhagavan Puja, he should be immersed into the puja. हाथ में घंटी है, मुंह में राम राम है, मनवा तो चहुद से फिरे, ये तो सुमिरन नहीं. Do what you are doing as if your life depends on him for that particular point of time. Swami Vivekananda's definition of Karma Yoga. I am right now in the Bhagavad Gita shloka. I should be here both by tan and man. The mind and the body and the vacha has to be kaya, vacha, mane. I should get involved into it. And that is why the golden words of Swamiji are 4 injunction for the karma. His concern should be with the action alone. Just think of the action. What am I doing now? I am in the office. No question of thinking about children, wife, her admission, that happened, what happened. Again, there is likely to be curfew in Dubai. What will happen if the curfew comes? I hope that the flights start early. I hope I have to see my old mother staying at the home. I hope somebody is taking care. No, sir, please, you are projecting thousands of missiles into the future. They all will come back and hurt you and destroy you. Be where you are, both physically and mentally. That is why staying in calmness is not a physical act. Calming effect is the effect of the mind. So he says his concern should be with action alone. He should not entertain, has no concern for the result is the second. And third, he says he should not entertain motive of getting a fixed or a specific fruit. This is more important. We want only specific fruit. My study should give me first rank, specific fruit. I'm not ready to accept anything other than that. The question is, acceptance is the rule, but acceptance at the cost of not doing the act perfectly is not expected. After doing 100%, that is why in medical language we always say, I treat, he cures. Treatment is in my hand, cure is in hand. I shall do it the best. Otherwise, every now and then a surgeon is entering into the body of a patient. There is a likelihood of taking away his life. But he doesn't think about it. It can happen that you might cut the inferior vena cava, or you might cut the aorta, you might cut the carotid. He will never be able to do the surgery. You do it with the hope that I shall do my act in the best possible manner. Whatever happens, then it's what? It's my and his destiny. That is why the work itself is a reward. And that is why while doing this, Gurudeva has given complete effacement of the ego and its vanities is to be achieved to succeed in this path. Ahankara laya. And mind well, this ahankara laya or effacement of ego is the basis of all the yogas. In karma yoga, you do it by getting immersed into the karma. In dhyana yoga, you do it by immersing into the dhyanam that you are doing. In bhakti yoga, you do it same by consecrating everything at the feet of Lord. And in jnana yoga, you do the same thing by realizing absolute impotency of the world around you by vyatireka. So all of them are directed in the same manner. So desire to do an action is inherent in us. Desire for the result of the action is what is told here. Please separate those two desires from each other. Both have same force behind it, but one is to act, because to act is why you're born. And another is to expect the result, the desire. That is the desire that is to be curbed. That is called vairagyam. Hari Om.
Hari Om. Thank you, Sanjay ji. Sandeep ji, do you still have any question? We have about 2 minutes.
Am I audible?
Yeah.
Am I audible? Okay, great. Sanjay, thank you so much for your explanation. I had a few more questions and all have got answered. Just one is pending.
Yes.
You know, as I look at it as karma to be an alamban for self, understanding the self or connecting the self or becoming the self. I mean, I can't explain that very easily, but it seems to be like a pole vaults pole, which allows you to go over the obstacle you're facing. It's not an obstacle, but it's just it allows you to go over your ego, so to speak. So this is the way I was thinking of it. Is this the right interpretation? And secondly, do we have any choice in the kind of, like you said initially, that upas and downs? So do we have any choice if we are presented with a karma to say, I don't actually want to do this, or as an ego, I can easily say that I don't want to do this, but is there an element of choice there if you do a egoless assessment?
Hari Om. As you rightly said, it is an absolute correct understanding that karma can be used as an alambana to cross over the ultimate obstacle in that pole vault, which is nothing else but avidya, so that you ultimately become egoless. And this itself is called karma yoga. Utilizing karma to overcome the reason or the cause of the karma, which is avidya, is karma yoga. So this is definitely, and it can be used as an alambana. There are two things. As Ramakrishna Paramahansa called it, karma is like a thorn. So you take another thorn to remove this thorn and then throw both the thorns. This is karma yoga. While Jnana Yogi, what he does is, he completely abdicates the karma. How does he do that? He just takes away himself as a karma yogi. Unlike a karma yogi, he takes away the doership from the karma. A karma yogi does not deal with the doership right away. After a period, at the last bastion, the doership also goes away. But he starts with this karma phalatyagam. And karma phalatyagam itself is a step towards effacement of the ego. That is what Gurudeva has described. That's first part. And second part is when it comes to choice of an action. For example, you have a choice, because that is how, if there is no choice, where is the prayatnavada? Hinduism does not believe in predestination to the core. It does mention that your actions will be modulated by your past, but it doesn't say that you have no choice for your future. These are two different aspects. Like as Karna said in Mahabharata, Kulayatte tu janmaha madayatte tu paurusham. I may be born as a Dasyaputra, as they call me, a son of a charioteer. I can't help it. It happened. Whatever Kunti did, I don't know what my mother did. I'm not aware, and I can't change it. But whether I'll be a superior warrior or not is in my hands. So on one hand, he got tied up by the past karma, but the future was in his hand. So that is why the Kriyamana Swatantre, it is called. My agami karmas, my coming karmas are in my hands. But the problem is, sir, it is so difficult because my past karmas are making it difficult. That is why I may be born as a poor person, yet I can study and become a rich person. But why did I get born in poverty? My past. But how did I become the rich person? Because of my present. So that is why you have a choice. And sometimes your choices, it is mixed way. Your choices are made by the past actions or the prarabdham, and your present also keeps shaping the future. So that is why a drunkard, if he's given a choice that, you should not drink, he will say, yeah, no, yes, no, and ultimately he will go for the drink. The reason is his past actions are predominating to an extent that his present is finding it very wobbly to take a decision. However, a person who wants to be in satsanga, he will leave entire family and say, tum log jao, you go to movie, I will go to satsanga of so and so Maharaj. So this is how the choices get exercised. The choice gets tainted by the actions made in the past. However, today's actions are the actions which are going to be the actions of past when I move forward. So in other words, irrespective of the situation that you are in, irrespective of the prarabdha that you have, use maximum of your freedom of action, which is called Kriyamana Swatantra, to shape the future. That is how the choice thing lies in that particular context. Hari Om.
Hari Om,
Hari Om.
Sanjay ji, after the closing prayers, I'll take 1 minute of your time after the closing prayers.
Hari Om.
Now it's time. Hari Om.
Sanjay ji, just can I ask one more question? Like Gurudev says that the karma done now is actually the result is the future of the present karma. Basically, what he's saying is that if you're engrossed in the present karma, the future itself is right now. The result itself is right now. So now, if I only get engrossed completely with the egoless state in the future, then I don't need to do the present karma, right? I mean, this is a kind of a naughty question, to be honest.
No. If you are egoless while doing a karma, there is no question of future, present, and past. Because a egoless person doesn't have kalam. Because you're done.
Right.
Egoless means what? Ahankara laya or egolessness means you are already crossed. Nistragunyu. The question is doing any act now so that my future can become better, means what you are basically trying to do is you are doing everything that can inculcate sattva guna in the present so that my sattva guna keeps on becoming more the sattva guna in the past, you get further sattva guna tendencies. So ascendancy through gunas from tamo to rajo to sattva guna, and then only a high dominated sattva guna pariposha helps you to ultimately cross that pole vaulting to become Nistraigunya. Hari Om.
Thank you, Sanjay ji. Very nice.
Can I ask one naughty question?
Yes, please.
Sanjay ji, this Karma Neva is from childhood. I'm listening to that and I'm analyzing it also. But one doubt I have is now, politics aside, when Narendra Modi ji wanted to become sannyasi and he went to Ramakrishna Ashramam, and the saints there asked him, no, this is not the place for you. You have better things to do. So
Yes.
whose action is taking place? What past karma is done in this? I'm just wanted to get a clarification on that.
See, Jnani always knows. If you go to a person like Gurudeva's stature and if you ask him for any advice, they always give the right advice because they have transcended the columns. They have the knowledge to know what is preponderant in you. For example, somebody who has got too much of Rajoguna him suddenly comes one day and says, Sanjay ji, I just want to leave everything and go to Himalayas. What would be my answer? I would say that, sir, you will not be able to do anything in the Himalayas. Like the way you tell your own children that, looking at your nature, I don't think you will be studying properly. It is better you stop all these activities. What you are trying to do is you have already read the mind in because you are more experienced. So the Ramakrishna Mission missionaries to whom he went in that particular instance, they realized that this person has a tendency of a particular type, one, and two, many a times, even if you have Sattva Guna in you, the role preferred to, forget about that. I'll give you a nice example. Do you know that Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj wanted to become a sannyasi? In Andhra Pradesh, in Sri Shailam temple, when he was taking darshanam, when he was on his southern sojourn towards Golconda, he went to Sri Shailam, and in front of Sri Shailam Swami, he was a born Shiva. He's called Shiva Avatar by Swami Vivekananda himself. So when Chhatrapati Shivaji went there, suddenly he felt like becoming monk. And what was he told? No, your duty lies in becoming a Chhatrapati. So your sphere of action need not, see, Jnani can be sitting on any seat. A Jnani can be a Kshatriya, a Jnani can be a Shudra, a Jnani can be a Brahmana. It need not be always a sannyasi. So then Chhatrapati Shivaji was told to be a karma yogi. A karma yogi and a jnana yogi, they are not too different. The levels are same, the field of action is different. One says action should not be done, so he becomes karma sannyas yoga. And one, he gets fully immersed into it. Mahatma Gandhi, Lokmanya Bal Gangadhar Tilak, Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose, Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, all karma yogis. Because there has to be some karma yogis for this society to be reformed. And there are some who do not get involved into anything but remain a guiding light like Shankaracharya. Now the question is, ask a question to yourself. Who was Gurudeva? A Jnana yogi, a Karma yogi, a Raja yogi, or the Hanuman Bhakta yogi? Think about it. Hari Om.
Hari Om, Sanjay ji. How are you?
Hari Om. Hari Om.
Okay. See that one of the discussions earlier, I somewhere you had mentioned about the sthiti meaning from the context of paristhiti, and we being identifying with the paristhiti outside. It is the choice of us. I think you mentioned the word upasthiti, or
yes,
there were three sthithis that you mentioned, Sanjay ji. Can you please?
Manasthiti.
Because what is that?
Manasthiti.
Sanjay ji, can you please? Because
yeah.
I am trying to connect the yogastaha, because
Yes.
in today's verse that to be steadfast in yoga, then it essentially becomes that we don't identify with the paristhiti.
Yes, correct. See,
So
it's three cities
for
are
that
paristhiti.
reason, I am asking Sanjay ji.
Yes. Yes. Paristhiti, upasthiti, and sthiti. Now, the sthiti is the original word which comes from the dhatu stha. So, swalakshe niyata avastha sthitihi. What is your actual sthiti, which is atma sthiti or atma jnana purvaka sthiti, is your sthiti. Now we are away from that sthiti because of the avidya that we had. So what is created out of avidya and our interaction with avidya, with the help with the help of avidya that I am endowed in as a jiva, creates a paristhiti for me, which are the past actions.
Yeah.
Prarabdha. So that in that paristhiti, I am upasthita. Upa means upa is close. I am standing close to sthiti actually. But I identify myself with paristhiti. Pari means around.
Yeah.
So
correct.
you identify with sthiti, it's not a problem. So your upasthiti, if it is for the sthiti, it is absolutely no problem. You are inching towards your swalaksham. But if you are identifying with the paristhiti, then you are getting entangled in the paristhiti, creating again new paristhetis.
Correct.
Hari.
Understood. Hari Om. So this also kind of answers Sandeep's question, that choice. We have to make the choice of becoming, whether the direction is sthiti or upasthiti.
Hari. Absolutely right. And
thank you.
Gurudeva's commentary for this, just one line is Gurudeva's commentary on this particular shloka is something I would say as Ishwarji says, that every pre-morning thing you should have this as a morning breakfast.
Correct.
Every morning
100%.
if you read it, I think our life will become so beautiful and our karmas will become so nice. Every day morning read this and do remaining 23 hours of actions.